You're listening to the Business Brain Food Podcast.
Welcome to the Business Brain Food Podcast, the show business owners listen to when they want to take their business to the next level. Head to businessbrainfood.com.au to catch up on past episodes and access show notes from every episode. Now, here's your host, Ben Futrell.
Well, welcome back, my friends, to the podcast. This is the podcast that is 100% devoted to taking you and your business to the next level. And the good news is, it doesn't matter whether you're brand new to this business thing, or maybe you're like myself and you've been in business for a long, long time, you got the scars and the wounds to prove it. No matter what, there's always something new we can do to take our business to the next level. Today's going to be absolutely no different. We're going to be talking to Troy Douglas very shortly. He's one of the co-founders of the amazing Nexba brand that is taking the world by storm. More about Troy very, very shortly. Before we talk to Troy, I just want to remind you the podcast is brought to you by maxmyprofit.com.au. The team at Max My Profit help you build the business you imagine. So when you kicked off your business, if you imagine having something that made you more money, maybe took less effort, was more fun to run, or maybe it was just easier, maybe it's harder than you imagined it would be, then talk to the team at maxmyprofit.com.au. They'll help you with all things from marketing, systemization, sales processes, help you get more clients and make more money and work less hours in your business. Head to maxmyprofit.com.au and they'll help you build the business you imagined. All right, so today's guest is Troy Douglas. He's the co-founder and global CEO of Nexba. Now, Nexba is Australia's leading naturally sugar-free beverage brand that's now sold in over 3,000 outlets nationally. 3,000, that's amazing. With strong marketing experience and a passion for innovation, Troy now heads up the international strategy, growth and direction of the Nexba brand, including the recent expansion into the UK and the future planned growth into the US market. Welcome to the show, Troy.
Ben, thanks for having me. That intro sounded pretty good. I'm like, what's happening?
Do you know, when you hear somebody read an intro like that, do you pinch yourself and go, wow, is that really where we're at now?
Yeah, I'm reminded that I'm no longer 21 and we're 9 years in.
which is amazing. And you know, you just said 9 years in, you started this thing back in 2011. I want to take you way back when you did start this business. Can you tell us a bit about what led to Nexba being created?
Yeah, absolutely. So my background is law and communications, and I'm one of on our products, there's the Aussie boys on the products. So my business partner's my brother-in-law as well, called Drew Bilby. He actually was in a place called Rio Nexba with a P. He says he was just drinking iced tea and healthier products, but I'm sure it was mixed with something. But he was inspired when he was overseas by the variety and the more options in terms of beverages in Mexico. So when he came back to Australia, he tapped me on the shoulder. I was obviously studying law and communications, and both of us were young and thought, why not? Let's just jump in and create a beverage company. But I think both of us saw a massive opportunity and a gap for better for you. The other big driver for us is the impact that sugar and artificials have on people's health in terms of diabetes and obesity is pretty alarming. And so we obviously set out then to be Australia's first naturally sugar-free brand, which is, I guess, the essence of our products, and the extensions that we have is based on this IP that we have around a natural sweetener blend, which emulates the taste of sugar. That sounds like a full-on pitch, but yeah, both of us saw an opportunity. We didn't think too much and we jumped in, and as you say, we're now 9 years in and in a pretty exciting growth position.
Yeah, I love it. He tapped me on the shoulder and I said, why not? let's just start a beverage company.
Yeah, it was a full-on experience. We actually we imported a canning line, set up a factory. With Drew's background being engineering, he kind of encouraged us, and I think that the fact that we dove straight in and set up a factory line and started to learn about what's involved in being in business in beverages, I think that's ultimately what allowed us to get resonance with big national accounts over time, because we were willing to back ourselves and create products that hadn't been launched before in Australia.
So tell us about that starting point, because I think most listeners will be interesting. You know, once you decided, we're going to give this a go. I mean, neither of you had been in a beverage company by the sounds of things, so you didn't have any experience in the industry. So what was the first thing you did?
I think I was very fortunate whilst I've been studying, and I'll share from my personal experience rather than Drew. So my background I was working at a lady called Sharon Williams, had a company called Taurus Marketing, and she was an incredible networker. And she just taught me to not be afraid to reach out to people who have been incredibly successful in the industries and the fields that they've been in. So, and then with Drew's background in terms of engineering, he then felt confident in the fact that we looked at the market in Australia and we recognised that we began this journey in iced tea. And we chose iced tea because it was a very stagnant category. It was only 2% of the beverage market. And we believed that we could bring a better for you iced tea in a can that was different to Nestea, Lipton, the major brands at the time, and have more unique flavours and less sugar. So I think for us, we did a lot of personal growth and reading, and then we reached out to ex-CEOs of Coca-Cola, any founders of many established beverage brands themselves, and really just had chats over coffee like this and picked their brains on their experiences. And I think that helped us navigate many of the challenging times that we've had over 9 years, because we've had great people around us supporting the direction of the business.
Yeah, which is so important, isn't it? So to this day, you're still working with mentors, and have you got people around you? Have you got a board, or how do you go about, what does it look like now? I mean, 9 years later, 3,000 outlets internationally. Tell us a bit about what the business looks like today.
Yeah, ultimately we self-funded and bootstrapped the business for nearly 7 years. Drew and myself aren't from big sort of financial backgrounds, so we had multiple loans and mortgages. Everyone knows in business that banks, they support you when you don't actually need them.
Unfortunately.
We had incredible people. Peter Barron, we call him the godfather of Nexba. He actually invented Sipper, which is a flavored straw device which can deliver. It's now being bought by a pharmaceutical company in terms of delivering medicines. But in his background, he had an experience of raising a lot of money, and what he taught us was that businesses in FMCG that do have a lot of money can spend a lot trying above the line advertising budgets, etc. But ultimately, if you just focus on taste loyalty, you can drive and organically grow a business. So the structure, to answer your question on the structure today, once we created our IP, which we've patented in terms of our proprietary blend and natural sweetener, which took us 6 years to develop. So we had multiple products that we've launched. We've added and driven growth in channels like petrol and convenience, but ultimately, once we had the ability to create no sugar, nothing artificial products, we knew we needed to step it up. And that's when there was a gentleman called Steve Marbani, who was a friend of mine for many years, former partner at PwC, and has gone out on his own in supporting businesses do capital raising. So myself and him then reached out to, I guess, the informal network and mentors that I've had for many years, including Adrian Hondos, he used to head up the ex-CBA, Phil Baldock, who's the ex-head of Beam Global. So we do have an advisory board, which also has Paul Zara. It sounds like I've named dropping, but Paul Zara is the ex-CEO of David Jones. John Bacon's another amazing Australian businessman and investor. He had a company called Link Healthcare, which he ultimately built and scaled and sold into the UK. So we do have a advisory board in which Drew and myself are the main directors, but we've set it up as if it is an official board. Ultimately, it is incredibly valuable to be able to share the strategies of business and have that type of caliber of people test and challenge what you think you're doing, because ultimately business is tough. It's never easy. It's taken us 9 years to be in a really great position in terms of high growth. And then the other key thing I think for us in terms of structure and people is our executive leadership team. So we have a really amazing executive leadership that runs our Australian business, which we call our core market and core business. And that's got people like Steve Smythe, who's been with our business for nearly 4 years now. And he was ex-PepsiCo. He's incredible at supporting our West and our Coles and the big grocery retailers and those relationships. Then we've got Tia Saunders, who's our head of marketing, Dan Talbot, ex-Pepsi, and recently we've had built up with a new CFO, Gabrielle, who's joined the team, ex-Metcalf. So I think it's incredibly important to have a really solid executive team that you can trust, because as a founder, I think part of my role over the years has been to constantly reinvent my role and almost make myself redundant to then help accelerate growth through other ways.
Yeah, well done. I mean, and
It's been a wild ride.
Yeah, it sounds like
goes.
what you've identified is you've got to find people with the skill sets that you don't have, and you've got a lot of people on your team with a vast amount of business experience and some of it industry experience. So would you say that's been key to the success of Nexba?
I think our approach, so our values of the business, we've had this mantra, naturally brave mantra, in terms of how we operate. Ultimately, it's a very simple opportunity if you articulate that what happened in an industry that we're playing in is sugar has been, the truth about the impacts of sugar on health are becoming incredibly known. And then what the trend for multinational businesses has been is to replace sugar with artificial sweeteners, which is almost as bad, if not worse. So to communicate to retailers who are ultimately your partners in growth that there should be, now that you can create the same taste as sugar, but be no sugar, nothing artificial, without the negative impacts on a physiological sense, it's quite an easy thing to push through. So for us, a key thing is, yes, the team in the business, but even more, it's our manufacturing partnerships and treating customers in a collaborative way, where all our innovation to date has been developed with Coles and with Woolworths in terms of pushing as an emerging challenger brand, your best asset. Sometimes you can't afford what all the multinationals have direct access to in terms of data. They probably know how you're selling more than you know yourself. So ultimately, you need to find what is your difference and how can you drive incremental value to the people you partner with, which is, for us, it's retailers, because we've built a very traditional based business in Australia.
Yeah, through the retailers. So let's go back to the beginning then. You mentioned that you guys bootstrapped it. Were there any times when you and Drew thought, we just can't do this? It's too difficult. Like, were you dipping into your mortgages? How are you financing it yourselves?
Yeah, I think, for 5 years we probably never really paid ourselves legitimate salary. We are incredibly supportive family and friends. I think when you believe and you're passionate about making a difference with your business, like, very much, I'm a big believer in profit with purpose, and so is Drew. And ultimately, I never would have got through to where we are if I didn't have my business partner, Drew. So I think through what you learn is to have an incredible partner in business, then you have no option but to push through the challenging times. And because we ultimately knew that we've got a really strong point of difference that can drive value, it's been okay to navigate that stuff. And I think what happens when you, over years, is it's about not predicting, but being able to have complete oversight into your business and good governance in place that you can then preempt, like simple things, having risk registers on your advisory board at an advisory board level, so you can constantly be aware of what potential challenges might come your way, and if they ever do, how are you going to navigate and turn that into an opportunity for growth. That's been, I feel like I'm just
So that's okay. So what? Tell me a bit about, if you could start over again, is there anything you'd do differently now, knowing what you know now?
I think that an example of scaling quicker, so we describe ourselves as having gone from a startup to now scale up, is we can definitely scale fast in a new market because of everything that we've developed and learned in over 9 years. So when we went over to the UK, within 2 months, we secured, or in our first trip, we secured partnering with Sainsbury's, which is the third largest retailer in the UK, to launch. So I think the ability to scale, because of the team and the experience behind a business, becomes a lot more real. And I think that's what I would have learned if I was to go do something again. I think that Drew and I think it's been a very incredibly valuable experience in our industry. Obviously, tech can be very different in the stories and the people that I meet in terms of raising incredible amounts of money of no revenue basis is a different approach to us, which we bootstrapped and organically grew revenue. And I think that if we had unlimited cash or backed by private equity or who knows in the beginning, I think that you can get in the pitfalls of not actually understanding what it is that consumers are buying into your brand and your business, and you can probably lose a lot of money. So I don't know if we would be in a different position. I think they were actually in an incredible position because we bootstrapped for so long, because now we know when we do spend money, what does that actually drive and how can we now scale and accelerate off that platform.
Yeah, and just in the last couple of years, you've started raising capital. Can you tell us a bit about why you've done that and how you've gone about raising capital?
Yeah, I think capital raising is a intense and very rewarding process. I think for founders driving a capital raising process, I think it is important to be across it. I think you need to treat capital raising as you are becoming custodians of people's investment and finance. And I think you should see that the people who come on board, hopefully they can also add value, even from a network perspective, like many of the people in our, as we call our Nexba legends. When I've shared we're going over to the UK, they've shared their contacts and that have led to opportunities in a new market for us. So I think that one learning that Drew and I have had is you need to share both the good times and the bad times, and just be transparent in that communication with people once they're on board the journey and backing you. So we established a solid pre-money valuation of 20 million. It's all publicly in the media. Stage of closing that a 6 million investment round, which ultimately has allowed, it's provided working capital, and it's supported us getting the right people on board, which is now why our business is in such solid high growth. So last year we grew 148%. This year we're expecting to beat that again. And FY20 from a budget perspective is looking really exponentially larger, which is kind of a new experience after 9 years.
After the first 9 years
nice
of not paying yourself for the first 5, yeah. So you've raised $6 million, and so tell us a bit about that. Have you sold down the company to do that? Have you just promised returns? Just so budding entrepreneurs can get a feel for what ways they can structure investing.
Yeah, so ours is obviously a capital raise where we established a valuation for the business. So it's an equity, so people are buying securities and shares in your business. So we issued $6 million, and it was $1 per share basically. So we've issued 6 million shares to give us that post value of the 26 million. Is what we've done. And in terms of the how it went about raising is, I was incredibly fortunate to be have a friend and a business a colleague in terms of Stephen Bunny, who supported myself in driving the capital raising process. And it's typically been a lot of private individuals and experienced entrepreneurs in business who have chipped in and back to the business. We're actually live right now on Venture Crowd in closing out this final allocation, which will complete the 6 million of our what we call a Series A raise. So Venture Crowd is a crowdfunding platform. So if anybody's considering crowdfunding, my take on crowdfunding is after you've established a valuation and a certain amount of money has been invested, it can be a really nice way to allow people who can't so our share register, which is what you have when people invest, we had a minimum amount where people need to invest 50,000 to be on that share register. So if there's anyone that fell under that category, by opening up onto a crowdfunding platform like Venture Crowd, you'll be it's very humbling because you get a lot of friends and family and people who've known you for many years jump on board and like, oh, finally I can, and they just do it without you even knowing. With that comes pressure, obviously, but
Yes,
it's
yeah.
I think
Now you got to perform.
yeah, but we've always known we need to perform. Like we're all in. I jumped. We went from I was at uni to sending out to factory. So, and we're very excited in terms of the direction we're heading. So we're very confident in the growth that we're going to achieve.
Yeah, I mean, they reckon the horses that win races are the ones with good jockeys. So, I think investors are always looking for good jockeys, not good horses.
Yeah.
And I mean, of course, the horse has to be something that's going to run a good race, but without a good jockey, it ain't going to win. So that's interesting to hear that you've gone down that path. Now, from an entrepreneurial point of view, I guess for you, did you in the beginning when you and Drew sat down and said, "Let's do this"? Did you plan out and say, "Hey, we're going to take on the world. We're going to internationally distribute this product," or is that something that's just evolved?
I think we were very clear that our vision from an early stage was we wanted to be. We actually always had the same vision: Australia's naturally brave brand,
Mm-hmm.
delivering naturally sugar-free innovation to the world. So that we did have that belief, and the reason why we focused on achieving that is we genuinely believe that we can accelerate an industry to reinvent all high sugar and artificial categories, because it's a no-brainer if you can create great tasting products and not impact negatively on health as much as sugar and artificial ingredients do. Then I think it's a really exciting way to make a big difference in what people consume from a food and beverage standpoint. So we have, I think we always knew that we had this ambition of we wanted to build an Australian brand that can go global. The how do you do that now is really the strategy where we picked. You need to have your core base. Australia for us needs to be our innovation house where we collaborate with the customers that we continue to collaborate with in terms of Coles and Woolworths. So we've gone from, we don't even have iced tea anymore, which is where we began. We actually got soft drinks, sparkling waters, tonic waters, and now we've stepped into a much more functional beverage space with our kombuchas and probiotic waters. And that's been largely very much a joint scenario with our key account partners like Coles and Woolies.
Yeah.
And now Sainsbury's in the UK. So yeah, I think we always had that. I think when you start to get people on board and lead a team, it becomes more critical than ever, especially if you've got a co-founder. You both need to, like, we tussle it out all the time. We probably, I think we've just had a transparent feedback session where if people don't know us, it can be confronting how we operate.
A transparent feedback session. I want to learn more about this. It sounds interesting. You there?
I've just I just lost you, Ben.
Oh, did you? I wondered what happened there.
They were good. So I'm assuming you're asking what the transparent feedback.
Yeah, I was interested to learn more about what this transparent feedback session is and why it's so confronting.
So Drew and I, a friend of mine actually is a lady called Amanda Price who created a thing called High Growth Ventures, which KPMG, it's housed at KPMG, and they have this founders program. And I think it's very easy to never take the time to truly reflect and look at where you're going. So I think the experience for Drew and I to take time out of our business and do that founders program was really valuable. And one of the takeouts we got from that is a bit of a external sort of coaching for you. We went into business, our business is growing, and we never really learnt or we've evolved as leaders, but we've never been trained to be, how do you become the best leader of a business in high growth? And part of that is being honest with yourself in terms of your strengths, your challenges, things and opportunities that you can work on to make yourself perform better for the business ultimately. So the question is, basically allowing somebody to speak to people that are close to you anonymously and get their feedback, and then that gets delivered back to you, which is a really positive experience confronting. But I think that our whole mentality has been you need to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, because if you're not uncomfortable to a degree, I don't think you're necessarily ever really growing or making a difference in the industry you're playing in.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear you say that, because I mean, a lot of people go, just hustle, 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 work hard, and you'll get the results. But one of my favourite all-time mentors and an amazing entrepreneur was Jim Rohn. And Jim Rohn had a saying. He said, "Work harder on yourself than you do on your job." And has that been an important path for you to and Drew, is taking time out to work on yourself? Have you done this a lot? Have you had workshops and do you take time out on a regular basis to learn?
Yeah, I love that. I think I think that's a great viewpoint, and I agree. I definitely we were not good at it in the beginning for sure. So I think that we're because it was us two for a long time. We never needed a pat on the back. We never needed to celebrate the wins, because we just saw the next thing that we needed to get through to take us to the next phase. But ultimately, when you start to have other people around you on the journey, you need to share the wins and the growth. And I absolutely know that within myself, and I know Drew's the same, that we've definitely seen the advantages to being able to reflect on what am I really good at, what is Drew really good at, how can we unlock growth further by focusing on that. And like, it is true, find the people that are better than you to come into the business. I ran our cash flow for 7 years, 8 years, and I'm not a person with a finance background, so ultimately, when you get, I think you need to be incredibly good at understanding and seeing the details in a business. But if you can hand over the operational execution to people that are better than you, that allows you to grow quicker. And yeah, I definitely think that you have to work very hard in the beginning. And ultimately, if you got a business, the key to a successful business is if it can operate without you in it. You will always be on. I spoke to a friend, incredible, an amazing person. He successfully sold a company, but he said that he was one of the happiest days in his life, because he felt for the first time ever the monkey was taken off his back. Because I think you can feel quite isolated and challenged when you need to scramble and you need to work hard.
Yeah, it can be difficult as entrepreneurs, can't it? How do you deal with that? Do you have your own way of dealing with the fact that sometimes it can be quite isolating?
As I mentioned, I think I'm incredibly lucky because Drew and myself are very different, and we kind of support ourselves through that process. I think ultimately, I'm also fortunate that I've got an amazing partner. My fiance, Blake Bowden, is a huge support to me. But ultimately, and this was kind of came out of the founders program, the concept of people in high business positions aren't necessarily treating themselves as if they're an athlete. And if you think of an athlete, they've got everything around them in terms of good nutrition. Everything's about how can they sustain performance. And you hear many stories of people burning out who are deemed workaholics. So I think for both Drew and I, we encourage in the business and in the team exercise. If you come into the office at 12 o'clock, there's probably not anyone around. I'm not inviting everybody to just come raid the office, but everybody will be off at the gym, which is, I think, a good. For me personally, exercise is, I know that it's a good way to handle stress and switch off, and mindfulness and meditation. I'm a believer in that stuff as well.
Yeah, and you mentioned you've got a really good partner. Do you take work home? Like if you're really stressed out, do you take that home? Is that what you mean? You can vent to your partner, or they just support you through understanding that you're going through an immense journey of growth, or what do you mean by that?
Yeah, I think everyone, how they operate with your partner is completely up to you guys. But I think as up to each individual relationship. But for us, what works for myself and my partner is we're both high performers, and we both share and communicate our experiences because it helps us digest them, and then add value to what we need to win. One of the books I read recently was the whole one big thing. What's the one big thing I can do today to then make the days after easier, so to speak? And you may not realize things immediately, but suddenly 9 years in, you can be like, oh wow, things are actually are working quite nicely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just mentioned there reading a book. Is this one of your habits that you do on a regular basis? Because I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, and I find that some do consume a lot of books or audio or go to a lot of training, and some don't because they feel like it just creates the next shiny object to go chasing. Is that part of your habit? Is it something you do on a regular basis?
It's, I think one of the things that I'm working on right now for myself is the ability to switch off more. But I agree. I can agree with both of those comments. It can definitely make me want to work more if I start reading too many business or books and things like that. But I think that life is always about self-growth. So audiobooks and stuff have been really good for myself if I can allocate the time. And I travel a lot to the UK, etc. So audiobooks are a really good thing to enjoy whilst traveling. I definitely encouraged that aspect because you never know everything. You can always improve. But that said, one thing I've learned with having a team and people around is everybody's different in how they operate. And I can be seen as quite a restless person if I'm talking about all the stuff that I'm reading and learning. So I think now I know that it's important to do that stuff in your own time and digest it. You don't need to distract other people by sharing everything.
Yeah, because some of them probably get freaked out by it. Go, what's Troy up to now? What three pieces of advice would you give to a newbie jumping into something like this? If someone's got a great idea, they want to take on the world, and they don't know where to start.
I would say don't do it if your reason for doing it is to make money. I think success is 100%. Peter Barrett instilled in us that success is the byproduct doing business right. So that's number one. The second one is absolute passion and belief in what you're doing and what your idea is, because that authenticity and that belief in your concept is what will become infectious and get the people to join that journey. Like it took us 6 years to be naturally sugar-free and thousands of flavor iterations to actually be there. So we just knew that we could get there one day. There was no real science to that. It made sense that we should. And third one, don't lean into fear and don't expect to not. It's probably not the healthiest mindset, but I always expect challenges to hit a strategy that might look amazing. And I think because of having that mentality, I've never been put off or felt like I can't get back up again because I've almost expected it to happen. That said, that if you can plan and if you can think about what are all the things that could happen, that can actually help shape and de-risk and reduce the challenges that will come or the obstacles that will come your way, because it's a long journey, but it's an incredibly rewarding one. Like I'm so lucky to be doing something that I love with people that we've brought on to join on a journey, or people that believe in us. I think it's a really cool one.
Yeah, you're doing some amazing things, which is
three, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was three. You did well. You kept track. I think it must be all those good natural sweeteners and drinks you're drinking. Keeping the mind sharp. Yeah. So you talked a little bit about there, expecting things to go wrong. Is that because you have had a few failures along the way?
I think it's just, or maybe it's because we actually weren't from the industry and we were very young in business. But I think that if you're not looking for blind spots or ways to add value to your strategy, then you can be shocked when things don't go exactly to plan. I think we're in the irony of what I'm saying is our Australian business is actually incredibly solid in terms of how we forecast and our expectations because we're proven performance. But when you're creating an idea and a business from scratch, that's what you're doing. So you need to, you're not going to know exactly how it's going to plan out. But if you're open and honest and the people that you're working with, if something bad happens with a customer, then you immediately get on the phone and you have that conversation, because then they're a part of the journey and almost a part of the decision making. So then if something does not go right, then they will support and help navigate you to a way that now I'm really proud of our business and our team, because we are driving incremental value in sales, and every Nexba consumed is one less sugar or artificial product consumed. So it's cool.
Yeah, it's very cool, mate. It's very cool what you guys are up to. And you know, it's inspiring. I think it's good for, budding entrepreneurs to hear that you went for so many years without really paying yourself a regular wage or anything, and that you've had your challenges, because we hear of these successes. I mean, you're in the media all over the place now. Your drinks are in all the supermarkets in Australia. I see them everywhere. So it looks like you're an overnight success, but the reality is two guys with an idea. I mean, it all started a tap on the shoulder and said, "Hey, mate, do you want to do this?"
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it couldn't be more true. Like when we started, and chatting to retailers, literally one of the challenges we needed to overcome was the fact that we would get feedback of, we appreciate the concept of better for you, but the reality is that consumers aren't purchasing that way. And it's just funny now to see the sugar is the new tobacco, and it is the forefront of consumers' minds, and people are absolutely moving towards healthier consumption choices because of the media and everything coverage that's happened. But yeah, it definitely wasn't the case in the beginning.
Yeah, and so you would have been fighting a different type of battle back then, as where now, like you said, sugar is the new tobacco. Artificial sweeteners are also now being questioned as to the effects they have on the human body as well. So that's really putting you in a good position, because you've got something totally natural. Mate, I take my hat off to you and Drew. You guys are doing a great thing, and it's great to see a couple of Aussie guys smashing it out of the park and going international. I think that's something that you should be really proud of.
Thanks so much, Ben. It's exciting. Appreciate it. And anybody who's a fan or ever drank an Nexba, obviously we appreciate all the support that everybody's given us. We wouldn't be where we are if it wasn't for our friends and family and the people that are heading into Coles and Woolies and buying our goodies.
Yeah, well, you're doing a good thing and you're helping them stay healthy. And I think that, like you said, if you're doing it for the money, it probably won't work out. If you do it for a much higher purpose, then people get excited by that, because you're doing something good and you're changing the world and the way they think and the way they drink. Didn't mean that to rhyme, but it did. There you go. How can people find out more, mate?
Obviously, our website, nexba.com, is a very easy way. Facebook or Instagram, it's just simply Nexba as well. Is always a good way. But if anybody has anything specific, feel free to hit me up on LinkedIn as well.
Fantastic. Well, what we'll do is we'll make sure that all those links and anything we've mentioned throughout today's chat is in the show notes. So you can head across to businessbrainfood.com.au. It's episode 213, or you can just search for Nexba and the interview will come up. And then inside that interview, you'll find all of those links. So if you're driving along or you're exercising on the treadmill, or maybe you're in the store buying some Nexba right now and you can't write anything down, and that'll make it nice and easy for you. Well, all we've got left to do, mate, is the 60-second scramble. That's where I ask you some quick questions. You give me some quick answers. Are you ready for that?
I am. I guess so.
I think you've been through thick and thin with the business. This will be a simple minute.
Yeah, let's go.
All right, let's do it. Number one tip for being more efficient.
Lists.
Do you have a hidden talent?
I can float a Malteser.
You can do what, sorry?
Floats a Malteser.
Float a Malteser. What, you mean through, like, above your lips by blowing, or?
Yeah.
That's we'll have to get a video of that, I think. What's your biggest addiction?
Nexba.
Yeah. What frightens you the most?
letting down the people that back us.
Describe yourself in one word.
Divergent.
Your favourite book?
Is Traction, in terms of a business book. That's quite good.
Nice stuff. And we'll finish up with this one. What's the strangest thing you have ever eaten? Sorry, the internet decided to play up then. What is it?
I just lost your last question.
Yeah.
2 seconds.
Yeah, so I just said, yep, can you hear me? The internet's playing up all of a sudden on us. Talk about terrible timing for the internet. Hopefully you can still hear me.
And I'm so sorry if you hear me. I'm not trying to avoid the quiz.
It looks like the internet is playing up on us.
I can hear you now. Sorry, yeah. I'm not trying to avoid the quiz.
No, I can imagine you're back. Good stuff. The final question there was, what was the strangest thing you've ever eaten?
A cricket.
A cricket? Was that in Thailand?
Which I think,
or where was that?
I was very lucky to go to this event in Boston for this Forbes event in Boston, and I actually think it's an industry that people will be eating more crickets over time.
There's
in terms of insects and who knows?
There's an insect delicacy prediction from Troy right there. Well, once again, buddy, thanks for joining us for the Business Brain Food podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show, mate. Alrighty, if you've enjoyed the Business Brain Food podcast, head across to businessbrainfood.com.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ben. I appreciate it.
Hey, our pleasure, buddy. If you've enjoyed the Business Brain Food podcast, head across to businessbrainfood.com.au. This was episode 213, so you can get all the info from this interview there, including all the links and any information. We'll have a bit about Troy there as well, and give you all the insights into Nexba and what's going on over there. So head over there for episode 213. Very, very inspiring story, and great to see a couple of Aussie lads getting this international exposure. Raising millions of dollars means that people really do believe in what they're up to and their vision, and supporting that process. So it really is a good validation for what they're doing. For me, it is always the story that I hear is it's the hard slog in the beginning, and sometimes people want that quick success and that quick recognition, but sometimes it just takes time. Working on your passion and getting the results and getting the runs on the board sometimes just takes a little bit of time and patience, but it does pay off in the end if you stick with your idea, if you know that it's going to work and you've got a niche, away you go. All right, today's episode was brought to you by maxmyprofit.com.au. The team at Max My Profit help you build the business you imagine, and the team is expanding. They're looking for business accelerators to join the team, and the way they've done that is they actually franchised their business last year. So Max My Profit has franchised back in 2018 and has started recruiting franchisees as business accelerators. So if you're a business coach, consultant, or advisor, or you'd like to become one, you've got a passion for helping business owners navigate the path of growing their business, and you think you've got what it takes, head across to maxmyprofit.com.au, click on the About tab, and you can read more about becoming a business accelerator. All right, well, that's it for this week. Thanks so much for tuning in. I've been Ben Futrell. You've been absolutely amazing for joining in and listening to this podcast. If you do enjoy it, head across to the iTunes store and leave your honest review or rating. And until next week, have a profitable day. See ya.